Hey everyone, this is Eran Stern for Artbeats.com. In this tutorial, I will show you how I created this bumper or trailer, or you know what, we can even call it a teaser for a reality show.
People always like to take pictures of me. I'm like a sunset.
Bye, I'm out.
We'll do most of the job here inside After Effects using, of course, some great Artbeats footage, but we will also rely on several plugins from Mettle, Trapcode, and Sapphire. But our work is actually starting with an audio sync which I've got from maybe one of the contestants in a reality show. Let's hear this one first, and on top of this we will build the rest. So here goes. Are you ready? Take a listen.
People always like to take pictures of me. I'm like a sunset.
And to me this sounds like something that might come up from, some beauty contest or something along those lines. So this was the audio that I've got. I went into Artbeats website and started digging there and searching for the footage that I wanted. And of course, it was very easy. First, just type the word sunset and you will get dozens, if not hundreds of clips to choose from. So in this first composition named Take a Picture, we can see the main sunset shot that we have. I'm going to press 0 on the numlock in order to create a short RAM preview for you. And you can see actually something which really relates to the audio that we just heard.
People always like to take pictures of me. I'm like a sunset.
And just in order to emphasize it a little bit, I took this audio and here inside After Effects, I placed the reverb plugin for the sound. Many users forget that we also have a category for audio effects, which can be very helpful, especially in this case when you want to just emphasize something and may want to demo it to your client to see how it sounds. Anyhow, this is our main shot here. Model that take photos of a sunset, but we want to make it a little bit more interesting. So first and foremost, I place the text here. I've animated the text using a simple opacity animator. I took it all the way down to 0%, and now using this range selector 1 with few keyframes, I just matched it to the audio guide that I had. I also scaled it a little bit from this point, meaning that I changed the anchor point so it will scale from here, and also added a nice drop shadow, and of course changed the blending mode of the whole layer to overlay. Now, one little touch that I want to call your attention is this quotes here. For me, it's very important that those quotes will be outside the paragraph, outside the line. And the way to do it inside After Effects is first to make sure that you are typing in a paragraph style, meaning that when you select the type tool, just create a paragraph and type something inside. Otherwise, it will not work. So when you have a paragraph text selected and you want to take those quotes and place them outside the paragraph so they will look like this, you need to tell After Effects to do it. And I will press Command 7 or Control 7 in order to call for the paragraph panel here. And when you select the text and go over here to this option flyout menu, you have this option called Roman hanging punctuation. And this is what will do this little magic. So this is without and this is with Roman hanging punctuation. So this is just a tiny touch, but I think it makes the text more legible. Okay, moving on. What I also wish to do is maybe create a little bit more of an interesting sky, an interesting sunset. So I've downloaded another clip. Let's double click on it in order to see it. And I will make sure that we can see it without any treatment. So here we have another version of a sunset with clouds moving very slow, also around the water area. And I was thinking that those clouds looks much better than the one that we had instead of an empty sky. So I took this clip and let me just show it to you. I placed it in the composition, added the curve effect, and color corrected in order for it to match the scene. It's also very important that we will match the sun in both clips. So I just made sure that the sun here and the sun from the new sky is one on top of the other. Otherwise, we will break the illusion. Anyhow, I wanted to put the girl in front of it. So I just duplicated the original layer and placed a level effect on it and crushed the histogram in order to generate a luma matte, which means that now we can use the dark and bright pixels in order to change the compositing of the frame. In order to do it, just make sure to place this shot on top of the other one. And for the new sunset, just select luma matte values of the clip above. And now we have the illusion of this woman obscuring the new clip. I've also masked the clip and feather the edge, the vertical edge, in order to composite it better into the scene. And now we have something which looks a little bit more interesting than the early sky that we just had. And also the overlay blending mode is working very nicely with it. Now I felt that this is not enough and I may want to add a little bit more interest. So I just felt that taking the picture of a sunset by itself is not enough. So I've searched for something that we can add to this background and I came up with this clip. So once again, I'm going to double click in order to show it to you here in the layer view. Let's make sure that we are seeing it as is and also create a RAM preview. And we see that we have some kind of a silhouetted amusement park, something that will add a little bit more life to the scene. So in order to composite this shot, I basically took the same steps. Let's come back to the composition. First, I used the level effect just in order for this to get a little bit more brighter so it will sit in the background. I've also changed the black output and did few color correction just in order to make it more connected to the shot. Then I've used the fast blur effect in order to make it a little bit more dimmed. And I've used the same luma trick that I just showed you in order to get these buildings to hide the edges of it. And now we have our final composite of the first composition. So let's go to the beginning and watch the result of it.
People always like to take pictures of me. I'm like a sunset.
Great, it looks very impressive, but we need to tie it with a pack shot in order to explain to our audience when and where this is going to be aired. For that, we are going to visit the pack shot composition and I'm going to walk you through this as well. So here we are starting with two 3D layers which create our floor and our back. We can also see them from a different angle just for you to get a sense of how I've built this. So we've got several lights here and this is our camera. And of course the camera is already moving by a usage of a null object. I will show you in a minute what it does. But for now, let's come back to the view of the camera and examine the layers that we have. So we are starting with our main text here. And this is a basic After Effects text, but in order to make it a little bit more 3D, I've used the fast blur on it and then applied the Mettle shapeshifter effect. Now this is basically uses your alpha channel and also you can apply a displacement mapping and a reflection mapping and create this 3D model which behaves very fast inside After Effects. I'm not going to cover it in depth. I just want to play with it a little bit so you can see that we have also a nice reflection on the letter themselves. This reflection is defined here under the reflection mapping, and I just want to show you which footage I used for the reflection map. So the reflection map is also here in the main timeline. I'm going to double click on it, and we can see that we have an instance of the sunset that I used earlier. And what I did is basically duplicated another copy on top of it, masked it, and this way I left only with those skies and clouds creating the reflection map. I also placed a solid layer with a blending mode of overlay in a 50% opacity just to introduce a little bit more of a goldish scheme. Anyhow, back to our peg shot. By using this as a reflection map, we have all those nice detail on the letters. Now the text looks like it is a little bit out of touch in terms of our floor and our 3D environment. So I've duplicated another instance of it and just flip the layer and let the shapeshifter do the same math, the same extrusion, and this create a nice reflection on the floor. But in order to make it a little bit more in place, I've also used this simple shaped layer to create shadows on the floor. This is basically a 3D shape, very simple, just a circle, just to make it stay in the place that it needs to. And I've also blurred it using a fast blur, and this sells the illusion that the text is really there. Now that we have our fancy 3D text in place, we may want to introduce our model back into the scene. For that, I've used this clip. So first let's double click once again in order to see it in its full glory. It's already being pre-keyed for you, so when you download it from Artbeats, you also get a very precise alpha channel, so it is very easy to compose it. So this is exactly what I did. I placed it here in the timeline, make it a 3D layer, and it is already starting to look very convincing. So at the beginning of this, the girl is popping out, puts her hand, and look around the scene. So of course, if she's looking around, let's build something to look at. So first we have the title here, and this is our main title for the show when it's going to be aired tonight at 10:30. Make sure to tune in. And in order to make it a little bit more believable, I took the same steps. So created a duplicate, flipped it just in order to create the reflection, and use another copy, placed it on the ground just to create the contact shadow. This will make it look very believable. And the text is just arriving from outside the screen into the shot and resting here in its final position. Now, of course, this is all well and good, but I wanted a little bit more, so I've decided to add some particles here. For that, I've used particular, and I have two instances of the particle. One here, which I named particle front, and the other one is particle back. Basically, those are the same layer, so it is a duplicate. And all I did is change the visibility here using those settings, the far vanish, far start fade, near start fade, and near vanish, just to make sure that some of the particles will be rendered in front and some behind of those elements. For the rest of the things that I did in particular, let me just run on them very quickly. Under the particle, I used the texture polygon, and this is once again a very basic shape. So this is the custom particle. I defined it here under the texture, so this is the particle texture. I played with the rotation, so those blue coins look like they are at the right angle. I also made sure to enable the shading because particular really acts well when there are lights in the scene. So to get this look, I played a little bit with the nominal distance and the diffuse. And then, most importantly, under physics, I changed the physics model to bounce and define the floor as a bouncing ground. So when the particles are falling down, they will hit the ground, they will hit the floor and bounce up. Of course, in order to make them fall down, I enhance the gravity factor here to 80. Basically, this is all that I did. I will make sure that this project is available for you to download, so if you want to investigate and dig in a little bit further, you will be able to do it. So this is it for the pack shot. This is the scene. I just want to remind you that I have also a camera orbital which controls the camera, and for the first second I also added an adjustment layer with the CC Force Motion Blur. So this is how it looks without the motion blur. Just going to drag it. I did it because Shapeshifter does not support motion blur and depth of field, and I really felt that by doing this kind of a move, you should have some kind of motion blur. So this is where the Force Motion Blur adjustment layer comes in place. Just make sure to trim it afterwards, because from that point onward, the text is not moving, and particular, of course, will respond the motion blur and also the depth of field that I enabled for the camera. So this is our pack shot. I'll go to the first frame and create a RAM preview so we'll get a sense how it looks. And this is the way it looks with all the elements combined together. You can see some of the particles are jumping behind the letters, some in front of them. This is thanks to the vanishing options inside particular, which I really love. Now it's time to tie both of the composition together to create our final shot. So for that, I created a new composition and drag down both of the compositions that I just showed you. And of course, the obvious way to tie them together is using some kind of a sun transition, maybe a lens flare transition. And this is what I choose. So here I have an adjustment layer, and I'm using the new Sapphire lens flare effect in order to create it. I'm going to press on the edit lens here, which will open this new interface, and here you can build and design the lens flare so you can see all the elements that it consists of. Once again, I'm not going to cover it here in depth, I just wanted to show you how I build it. And then I've animated some of the properties such as the position of the lens and the scale of it, just in order for everything to combine together. So it's starting from the sun itself and doing some kind of a move when the layers are changing their opacity until we are finishing with a little spark on the E, and then the model is basically coming behind the letters doing her thing. The dimes or the particles starts to fall, and of course we have our final text which tells us when the program is going to be aired. And that's basically it. I've added few sound effects and an audio guide, and let's go to the first frame, over to full screen, and watch the final outcome.
People always like to take pictures of me. I'm like a sunset.
Bye, I'm out.
So once again, you saw how easy it was using great clips from Artbeats library to compose, design, and deliver this nice trailer, this nice promo. Hopefully you find some good tips and advice here, and I hope to see you in our next tutorial, or before that in the next best model tonight at 10:30. Until then, this is Eran Stern for Artbeats.com, wishing you a great and creative day.